When you get there?
So when you get there, when you actually walk in the person's office, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, other thought?
I would say from the time that they make initial contact with you to set up the interview.
First correspondence, first connection, first kind of communication with somebody. Yeah, those are all the points. Actually, when you make a first contact with somebody, you get something in return. That's really the clock is ticking. You're already making first impressions, both through your resume as well as your email communication, all those sorts of things. The actual evaluation is starting. A point about the interview, a lot of people think, okay, I got to have it all together when I walk in, and the firm handshake, and the good eye contact, and the confident voice, and so forth. And those are all very important things. One point you need to keep in mind is the actual face-to-face portion of this interview starts the second you drive on this person's property. This comes from experience. Again, this is not something you're going to find in a Google search, which is what I love about what we do. I have a good friend of mine, very high-level decision maker in a company that I've worked with for years. He has the personal belief that the inside of your car tells a lot about you as a person. You heard this?
Yeah.
How organized, lack of organization. If you're like mine, you got a spare tire sitting in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about
Just safety.
Right, something about.
Does it have a hat on it?
Does it have a hat on the tire? No. But he firmly believes that. He believes that the interior of your automobile reflects you as a person. And so he has done this on several occasions where he'll be interviewing somebody, and guess what he's got one of his assistants do?
Looking in their car.
Yes,
Wow.
that's
Yep.
exactly right. So keep that, yes, Brian.
You know Tim's Russell. You know Tim of Tim Strategies.
Okay.
Tim went to interview for Ed McGuire's Saddleback. Tim drives a black on black BMW. Guess what he spent doing the day before his interview?
Cleaning.
He went out and bought every McGuire's product because
Wow.
he heard that while he was in the interview,
Oh.
senior management was going to be out looking at his car. So he detailed that car out because
Using your product.
using their product. Because A, they were going to ask him about it. But B, you show up in a dirty car
Get
at
it
the
ready.
wires, not going to go so well.
Yeah, and now don't let that scare you, but just understand that that's a reality.
Think about it.
And I'll tell you, again, you reminded me of a story. I hate to admit this, but my client, as mentioned, was Hertz rental car. The first workshop I did with him was in Denver. And if you've ever rented a Hertz car, and our ears are probably burning while I tell this story, you know they're a little on the pricey side compared to Thrifty and Dollar and Payless and Fox and some of those. So they're a little on the pricey side, and with all my other clients, I tended to rent from Dollar because they're a little bit cheaper. And I'd gotten so much in the habit of renting from Dollar that when I made my reservation to go do this first workshop in Denver, and I'm like a robot with this. I booked the flight, then I booked the car, and guess what I did? I rented a Dollar car. Now, can you think of anything more stupid, honestly, than driving up to a Hertz regional office? Now, this isn't just a brand. This is a regional office with regional people running around and grand poobah type people and decision makers. And what do? They're paying me for my services, and I come driving up in a competitor's car. How dumb is that? So the interview actually starts the second you drive on that hiring manager's property. So keep that in mind. The other thing to understand about before you come face to face with a hiring manager is when you walk in that lobby or whatever the area is when you walk through the front doors, if there's a receptionist or somebody there that will greet you or somebody that even just sees you, if you get there, as Gail mentioned, a little bit early, and you're going to sit there with a little time on your hands. Don't be sitting there playing Angry Birds or Skyrim or something, okay? Read some of the journal, look professional, bring something to read. Don't be messing around because everybody is watching you. And I will tell you that once you have left that interview with the hiring manager, that hiring manager is going to go out and ask that receptionist or anybody that walked by in the hall or anybody that interacted with you their perceptions. It's not just the hiring manager, it's the whole environment. So the minute you drive onto that property, you've got to turn it on. You have to be professional because it's all going to come into play in some fashion or another. When you think about interviews, tell me something they all have in common.
They're all nerve-wracking.
Yeah, you stole my thunder already. Most people always say questions, answers, all those kind of things. Yes. One of the things that they all have in common is they're very stress-reducing, as is this remote. They're very stress-producing, and they're very anxiety-producing. Okay? It's just a fact of you being on stage. You're going to be under a microscope. People are evaluating you. Okay? There is stress involved with that, and we all know that again intuitively, whether you've interviewed for a job, whether you've interviewed to get into different internships, whatever it might be. Whenever you're being interviewed, there's always stress. So just accept that. It's going to be there. You're never going to be able to get rid of it. But you can reduce it a little bit. A little bit of stress is good because it puts you on your best behavior. It helps you perform better. But when that stress gets a little bit too high and it starts cutting into your performance, it starts making you get sweaty palms and all this kind of stuff, then you need to do something about it. So a couple thoughts for you. Try to get into a conversation with somebody that you know before the interview. Try to get into a conversational mode, okay? Because the more you can get in this interview face-to-face with a hiring manager and just have a conversation, that'll help calm you down. It comes across much better than if you're sitting there sweating bullets. So try to get into a conversational mode with a friend. Take a little bit of a walk. Just getting a little bit of exercise, getting the body working, doing a little bit of breathing like that will help you calm down as well. Now it's not going to cut the stress out completely, but it will help a little bit. Another thing that'll help you, and everybody do this, you can put your wraps down for a second. Everybody take your fingers like this and just put them together in front of you. We're not going to hold hands and start doing mantras here. Don't worry about that. But just take your fingers like that and just kind of bounce them together a little bit like that. How do you feel when you do that?
Weird.
Pardon?
Weird.
Weird? I know. Well, I think how I feel sitting up here in front of all of you. Very focused. That's an important point. What else? You feel a little distracted? You sit? Okay. One of the things, and we could go on forever, and I could brainstorm a whole flip chart full of things. One of the things that if you do that prior to an interview, one of the things that you'll find is that tends to help you feel not only focused, but confident. Okay? And the brain is a funny thing. It doesn't, if you feel confident, a lot of people, and there's been studies on this, one of the things that people do if they feel real confident and that they know what they're talking about, they'll do this. So the brain's a funny thing. It works the opposite way also. If you do that, the brain's going, oh, it's doing that, so I must be confident. Okay. And that's what you want to project in the interview, confidence, and you know what you're talking about. It works the same way with smiling. We all know the power of smiles. And the brain works the same way. Most people smile because they're happy. It's a function after becoming happy. But the brain doesn't know any different. So if you smile, the brain goes, oh, I'm smiling, I must be happy. Well, that's what you want to project when you come in. So practice smiling, practice this, you come across as more confident and more happy. The other thing, and there's studies on this, of using somebody's name. Hopefully in your research and trying to understand the company that you'll be interviewing with and the hiring manager, you'll find out this person's name somewhere along study said that if in a 15-minute conversation, you use the other person's name every 30 seconds, after you leave that conversation, they will think you are taller, thinner, and smarter. Now, who doesn't want to be taller, thinner, and smarter, right? So I'll repeat that. If you use somebody's name in a 15-minute conversation every 30 seconds after the conversation's over with, they will, when interviewed and surveyed, they say, what do you think about the kind of tall employee? You know, they were really kind of on the slender inside, boy, they really were bright. Well, if that's what you want the hiring manager to think about you, make sure you put their name in there. Now ask in advance if it's okay to use first name or last name, whatever, but that's an important ingredient. Now when you think about the interview, and any of you that are process type people or systematic type thinkers, this is a good way for you to think about the actual face-to-face portion itself, right? This is when you walk in the hiring manager's office. You actually stepped into enemy territory now. Think of it as an opening, is the first portion, and then you've got a question and answer period, and then you've got a close. So when you think about the time, from the time you walk in that hiring manager's office to when you leave that office, there are 3 specific phases. The opening, questions and answers, and then the close. Now the opening, the very beginning. Here are some considerations for you. Gail talked a little bit about first impressions, and I know Steve will as well. But here's a little bit more data for you. 90% of a person's first impression of you, 90% of it happens in the first 4 minutes, and it lasts forever. That's why I told you that if and when you ever think about me again, you'll see the earbuds hanging out of my pocket and the toilet paper off my shoe. That's what you'll remember. So keep that in mind, that when you walk into the interview, that clock is ticking, and then the first 4 minutes, this person is going to make their impression. I have a friend, she's a lobbyist in Washington for Mazda, right up the street, corporate headquarters right up there, Irvine by the Spectrum. I don't even know if I'm pointing in the right direction. We were talking, and she's hired and interviewed hundreds of people over her career, and we're saying, tell me something that bugs you about a candidate when they come in. She said, you know, if somebody shakes my hand and their palm is sweaty, it doesn't matter if they have an MBA from Harvard, they ain't coming to work for me. She goes, ooh, it's so gross. And that impression stayed with her. Regardless of the credentials this person brings to the table, the fact that they couldn't even take the time, and I know there's some medical conditions, I get that and so forth, but if that's your situation, do something. Do something before you shake that person's hand. Because that impression they're going to lock in on, and it's there forever. This other thing in italics here is really important to understand also in this opening of the interview. 60 to 80% of the impact you make comes from how you look, how you appear, and how you behave. Okay? So, I was doing this in New Orleans about a month ago. I was talking to a bunch of liberal arts kids at a university in New Orleans. And we did 3 different sessions, and there was one young lady, she was taking copious notes throughout the whole time. She actually attended 2 of the sessions. She approached us afterwards, asking questions, very pointed questions, gave all this stuff. I never saw her resume. I didn't know what her GPA is or was. She may be on academic probation, for all I know. But as a hiring manager, I can tell you one thing, that if I were in a position to hire somebody in New Orleans, I would look for that young woman because of her behavior. And I didn't see any resume, I don't know whatever, anything about her, but her actual behavior over the course of about 2 hours. That's all I know. And I would have been prepared to at least give her a shot at the interview. You see that? Can you see that? What kind of a, do you think Michelle Obama had this guy over for dinner? Now, this was about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. Michelle Obama, one of the things that I've heard is as tours come to the White House, she's very likely, if she's there, to just pop out and greet you and say hello. That this is a situation where this young man, those of you who can't see it or look through your bifocals like I have to, he has a Ron Paul shirt on. Okay. And I'm not trying to make any political statements here, but it's about that first impression. And I highly doubt that Michelle Obama had this guy hang around for dinner. That sort of thing. That first impression was probably not very solid. Okay, now this next portion is all about the question and answer. That's the guts of an interview. That's what we all know. We know intuitively, as well as if you've been in an interview, the bulk of it focuses around questions and answers. The hiring manager is there pretty much to fire questions at you, and your job is to respond in some sort of meaningful way. Now, one of the, there's an acronym up here that's called STAR. This is a tool that I tell hiring managers when I'm doing interviewing training and consulting with them. I tell them to ask questions. This is what I tell them, get this out of the candidate. Get STAR out of the candidate. And what I'm telling all of you is regardless of how a question is formulated or how a question is asked of you, respond using STAR. Now I'll go over it fairly quickly just so you understand. I'm going to back up. Here we go. Now the S of STAR is tell the person the situation you were in. When they ask you a question, instead of just saying yep or no, give them a situation you were in, first of all, that leads to whatever their question is all about. And wow. The next part of STAR is tell the person, okay, I was in this situation, here is a specific task that I took on based upon that situation. And be as specific as you can. Talk behavior, don't talk attitude, conscientious, dedicated, team player, all that persistence. No. Give specific behaviors. Create a picture in this hiring manager's mind so they can see exactly what you did. The third piece, you've got a situation, here's a task I took on, here are the specific actions that I personally did to accomplish this task. And again, be very behavioral, create a picture, create a video for this person so they can see exactly